Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, your global feel-good health radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is David Riddle. David Riddle is an Akashic energy worker. He lives in Oak Park, Illinois, right outside Chicago. And you can find out more about David Riddle and his wonderful work at chibalancingcenter.com. Welcome, David Riddle.
Thank you, Catherine. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So, David Riddle, you are an Akashic energy worker. What exactly are the Akashic records?
Well, the Akashic records is the records of our soul's existence, and it can embody even much more. It can actually embody places of physical, like localities too. So the records are basically records of our soul's existence to try to help us propel ourselves through the karmic work that we do as living. So like a lot of us come in with different parents and that help teach us the lessons. We run into people that bring us the records or bring us information or bring us our karma. So there's a lot involved in what the records are, but basically it's a way of our existence here on Earth to be recorded and to be worked on.
Right. Now, I really appreciate and love talking to other natural healing experts such as yourself, because we all do what we do in our own way. My 10th book is called Reading the Soul. And in my book, Reading the Soul, I talk about, as a medical intuitive healer, when I am reading the soul, what I look at, right? And we'll get into that. But it's basically the same as what you're talking about, the Akashic record. So for our audience, and you can tell me if you agree with this definition, your Akashic records are the unwritten records of what your soul is doing here in this lifetime, what your soul has been through, the karma that you're here to resolve, right?
Yes.
Right?
And everything gets locked up in our bodies. So that's what I have been working with, is actually helping people release some of the things that are in their bodies so that they can have a more free existence without all that karma in their way. Yeah. So by having by being able to release some of the old patterns within ourselves, we're able to find out a better way of living. A lot of people that use the Akashic records do it in a manner of doing readings. That is almost like, that's pretty much like 99% of the people that are going to be doing work with the records, is where they open up the records and they help the person through voice, or through, actually there's energy that comes through in a reading too, to help them release the karmic issues that are in front of them. By having a better understanding of what's going on in their lives, they can maybe change some of the patterns, maybe get a better insight, and then their karma gets resolved to the point that they are able to move into a different pattern.
Right.
I've seen it before where like people will be in a relationship, like this is just an example of what karma can be, where they're in the relationship, it's not a good relationship, there's something that's going wrong, and they get out of that relationship, immediately start seeing somebody else that they think is the right person, and then that whole thing just starts coming back at them because they hadn't resolved whatever energetically was aligned inside their bodies.
Right. Now, you and I both agree that when we don't resolve the soul issues, that they come into the physical, right?
Yes.
And it's my experience when I'm doing a medical intuitive reading, I read what's going on the physical level in your body. You know what that is. Your energy body, which includes your acupuncture system, your chakras, and the breath. And that's when you go to see an energy healer, such as yourself or myself, we're working on energy healing. Or if you're seeing an acupuncturist, or if you're doing breath work, those are all modalities that work on the energy body. Then there's, of course, the emotional body. What are the emotions that are causing things to lock up or get blocked or congested? There's your mental body, which is your thoughts and your beliefs. And what you believe is what you tend to manifest. But you are a soul. And I always say to people, because you are a soul, what your soul is doing is what you're doing, right? And this is what you're talking about with the Akashic record. So it's my experience as a medical intuitive healer. Your soul controls your mind controls your emotions control your energy, and your energy controls your physical. But as you say, if we don't resolve these things, it locks up. A great example of this, I just did a healing this morning with a lady in Africa. And she had severe jaw pain. Earlier last year, she had trigeminal neuralgia, which is the most painful condition in the medical literature. And what we did a healing to release a pattern called defensive jaw, which is where the muscles in your jaw lock up. And we identified the emotions and the patterns, and it all went back to energy and that she hadn't resolved from decades, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so spiritual patterns. So David Riddle, Akashic energy worker, how did you get interested in working with the Akashic records, and how did you connect it to the body work and the energy work that you do?
Well, that's actually a really interesting story, because how it all came together. Actually, I'd gone through life changes and became like starting to do the Reiki work that I was doing. I was a level 2 practitioner in starting to work with clients, and I was really amazed that sometimes I felt like there was like something that wanted to come through, and when I was doing this work with my clients, but for some reason I wasn't able to connect, and I would be like, "What is this?" Right? I'd be like, "Please show me." And within a couple of months of starting to do work with my clients, I was invited into a record class, an Akashic record class. I was there to help out. I probably wouldn't have normally joined a class because I'm not a reader, and that wasn't anything that would be along that line of work for me. I went in as a healer. And the first time I learned, opening the records, I could feel that energy coming through, and I could feel like an embodiment within myself that I finally caught that energy. I finally tuned in with whatever that energy was, which was the Akashic records really wanted to come through me. So then at that point, it was actually brought through in that class that I would be doing this type of work.
So what's unique about your work at qibalancingcenter.com is that you're integrating body work, energy work, and soul work at the same time, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And a lot of times it can be what's going on in the current person, but then that does help release the soul.
Yes.
Like I actually have a lot of regular clients that come in, kind of like, like getting a massage, it's good to get some type of work. Well, my clients seem to find that this work is the type of work that I'm not just lifting them and holding them, but it helps propel them in their lives in certain ways that other types of work just isn't able to do.
Yes. Now, I really want to commend you, David Riddle, because it's my experience. This is my 27th year in natural healing. And that
Cool.
I'm 6 years old, I've been at this for a bit. So when we integrate, when a lot of modalities just work on one level, like they will just work on the body level.
Yeah.
So I talked this morning to a gentleman, very complicated situation, and he said, well, I could go to a functional medicine practitioner. And I said, well, you're already working on the biochemical aspects of yourself, right? And you could work on that till the cows come home and eat well and take supplements and still not get any better. So when you work on all 5 levels at the same time, like we're talking about, the physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual, then you can really supercharge your healing. Because when you have illness and disease, it's my experience that it's work happening on all 5 levels at the same time, right?
Yes, yes. Actually, it's like for some reason I seem to be able to tune in very well with the emotional body. So when I open the records, that seems to be somewhat where most of my work goes. Although, there's the mental, because so many of us are caught up in our heads. And so sometimes it actually, when I'm opening the records and I'm feeling the energy moving through, if somebody's got a lot of stuff going up here, that's as far as I get to go for the original opening before I do the hands-on part.
Yes. Okay, well, I would really love to hear about what you read when you read the Akashic records. And sort of almost for sort of information for our audience, I'm going to talk
Yeah.
about what I read when I'm reading the soul, and then I'd love to hear from you. So I'm going to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I'm coming to this as a kind of as an anomaly. Doing the energy work, I have never done a reading, not other than a class, and I've done many classes, but it's just that was just kind of the setup of how those classes were.
Yes. And what you experience is what many of us experience when we go into natural healing. We'll start with one modality. It almost doesn't matter. It's like you open the door and you
Yeah.
pray and ask for help, and all this other information comes through and you integrate it in your own way. So when I'm reading the souls, this is some of the things I look at. First, I look at, where are you on your soul path? And there's basically 3 stages: unconscious. And so when you're unconscious, maybe, you're going through life, you may be a wonderful person, but you're not aware of yourself as a soul. Second phase is awakening, where you wake up and you go, wait a minute, I'm actually a soul. And you start getting curious. What is my soul path? What is my soul up to? And then the third phase is conscious, which is you are aware that you are a soul. You understand what your soul purpose is, what you're here to do in this lifetime, and you're following that. So when I think about karma, this is me. Just like you have a grocery list, you need to go to the grocery: butter, sugar, salt, whatever, organic vegetables, whatever it is that you need from the grocery. I think of your karma or your house cleaning. I need to wash the windows, vacuum, do the laundry. I think of your karma almost like a to-do list. So it's energy that you carried forward, and you're nodding your head. You agree, right?
Oh yeah.
From this or other lifetimes that, you may be here to resolve. And I use the analogy of house cleaning all the time, because I clean my house and it's like you're never quite done. Like I vacuumed last week and now I got to do it again. Or I vacuumed, but I still need to clean the gutters. So here are some examples of karma you may be here to clear. And this information, if you want to know more about it, comes from my 10th book called Reading the Soul. So examples of karma, and there's a lot to this. Addiction. That's a big one for a lot of people. You may be abusing drugs, legal or illegal, or maybe it's not your drug of choice isn't a drug, but over exercising or overworking, or some form of distracting yourself. Emotional starvation. I'm going to hit the highlights because there's a lot to it. Codependency, deep-seated negative experiences, genetic code dysfunction, heart scars, lost soul fragments. So this is where you've lost aspects of who you are. So for myself, for example, there was 18 years passed between my first and second books, and I literally lost my writer self, which is quite painful when you lose major parts of yourself. Negative cords and hooks, negative interference, negative self-image, parallel universe integration, where you're literally running multiple lifetimes at once. And that that's pretty exhausting. So a lot of people with chronic fatigue have that issue. Past life vows to avoid giving or receiving love. Past life vows to be a caretaker. Past life vows blocking your creativity. Past life vows of poverty and chastity. That's no fun. Past life vows of vengeance and revenge. Past life vows to enslave others or be a slave. Past life vows to deny the presence of God within you. Past life vows to prevent the personal use of healing energies. Past life vows to deny personal responsibility. Past life vows to sacrifice, suffering, negative spiritual energy. So you can have negative spiritual energy attachments. And then I look at, how does your soul communicate to you? Clairaudience, claircognizance, clairsentience, clairvoyance. And then I look at what soul medicine works best for you. Breath work, prayer, meditation, time in nature, etc., etc. So David Riddle, back to you. When you read the Akashic records, what sort of information comes to you? So I gave you some examples of how I do it.
Before that, I want to say that book sounds amazing.
Well, thank you. I love you too.
That's really something, that's really hitting on some very, very huge chords.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out. But what I do with the records is probably more along the lines of where a person is now and then what's ready to come up.
Yes.
So it's not like I go through a whole list of things. There's not a whole list. When I open the records, it's a very interesting, it's always been a very interesting thing, and it's given me, I don't know how to, it just gives me so much life to be able to channel this energy, because in everything that I do, I can always feel the goodness within the person. So when I open the records, I'm actually like connecting up. I do this record prayer. That's pretty much what they taught us, and I kind of change it around a little bit to do a little bit more of the embodiment of the energy of the person. By bringing the energy through, what I'm doing is I can actually sense where the blockages are. So my first reading when I open the records is my clients are usually laying on the bed, and then I open the records and I can get a sense of where their energy flow is or isn't. And that's like what I said. It's like sometimes when they're really in their head, I can't get in any further. But that doesn't mean that I'm not channeling it. It's just that that's where my read is. That there's a lot of energy that's up in the head, and then to bring that through. So it just gives me a clue of where to go. Sometimes I can feel something in the heart chakra, in the solar plexus, or maybe whether or not they're grounded or not. So each one of those gives me an idea of like the puzzle of how to put them back to the highest energy available for them for the flow. So my whole thing about doing the work that I do is to get them into their flow. It's to get them out of having these blockages, so that once that those blockages are gone, then they move into their own power, their own life. They get rid of the emotions that are blocking them. And of course, they can come back if they choose. But it's just a matter of giving them some relief in order to get on with their lives and move through the things that are blocking them from fully enjoying themselves. What's really cool is sometimes, like I'll like I just as an example, like I had one where I'm like, man, I could really feel something in your solar plexus, and I do an intake at the very beginning, but the person hadn't told me that they had the stomach flu the week before, and that's something that was still there energetically, even though that they had been cleared out of it. So it's just a matter of that original read, tuning in with them. And then that's when I do the hands-on work, and that's where I'm fully embodied with their Akashic records, so it becomes a very intuitive thing. So every session ends up being something different while I'm trying to unblock that flow. I don't go in there with my mind like I'm going to do this. It just happens. It becomes like where I have the ability to be able to get in that space of just holding the space and moving the energy through. Sometimes I'll be holding a place and it's just like, just stay, just stay, just stay. And then I get the feeling of where to move next. And that's with almost any intuitive healer, but with the Akashic records, open, I'm able to do that a lot better than just doing my Reiki sessions without the Akashic records. The intuitive abilities just, and they multiply tremendously.
Right. Now, you and I agree in that, when I'm giving somebody a soul reading, it's sort of an overview, just sort of like when I do a medical intuitive reading, that's like a blueprint for your optimal health. And
Yes.
again, going back to that house cleaning, analogy, I don't know about you, but I can only clean my house for so long. And, for most of us, when I'm doing healing, if I'm doing a healing to clear karma, we may work on one or maybe two issues at a time. And you always ask for the priority, what's up today? What's the most important thing to release today? And as you say, it shows up in a person's energy body, right?
Yes.
So when you're reading a person's energy system, how can you tell where the energy is blocked? Are you feeling it? Do you see it? How does the information come to you?
I'm totally a feeler. That's been my thing. I don't really see the energy around people, and some people are able to see the chakras. I saw the Cindy Dale thing. It's just like, that's amazing. I'm just not that person, but I'm a feeler, and when I'm doing the work, that's what I always found was interesting, is how when the opening happens and I'm sensing the energy, it's different than when I'm actually doing the hands-on work, where suddenly now I'm working with the chakras directly and feeling where the blockages are and are. So it becomes a puzzle system of where you can sense when a block is there, but there's sometimes where you don't want to go to that block until you go to the other places first to free that up. So it's just a matter of feeling the energy, feeling what they're feeling inside themselves, so that I'm able to help them release that.
Right.
So so it's just basically a feeling type of thing. And
right.
when I'm opening the records, I feel it in my body. When I'm working with them, I'm feeling it in my body, but also with my hands.
Right. So the gift that, for our audience, the gift that David Riddle is talking about is called the gift of clairsentience, right? Which is psychic feeling. You can learn more about how to open clairsentience and how to manage it in my book, Unlimited Intuition Now. But so what you're seeing, again, going back to how you do it, you feel the blocks in your own body, in your own energy system, but you know that that's information for you about what's going on with your client, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then you're using the modality of Reiki. You and I are both Reiki master teachers to move the energy. And what's brilliant, in my opinion, about Reiki is that it is so simple, but it's also so profound. Now, for our audience, we're talking about the Akashic Records. Would you be willing to share with us the prayer that you use to open the Akashic Records?
Not currently.
Not currently. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean there is a method of getting into the Akashic Records, but it's at a different website. It's my teacher, but I'm doing something that's totally different, and right now I'm just not.
Okay.
It's
So what are some of the guidelines that you follow to help you open a person's Akashic Records?
Well, for one thing, when you're doing work with somebody in front of you, you should have their permission. You shouldn't work on somebody. You shouldn't open the records on somebody that you don't know. But then these people that are sometimes like, I know that if you're very neutral and there's information about a public figure that can affect you, then that would be maybe something that would be acceptable. But the thing is that generally we work with people in the Akashic Records with their permission. And we don't work on anybody that's under the age of 18 because they should be legal. And it's just part of the system that I learned under.
Yeah, exactly. So there's ethics behind it, right?
Yes, and also whenever you're in the records, you shouldn't judge. You have to be neutral. So
Yeah.
When some of the people that I work with have told me certain things, provided, of course, that it's not anything really bad, you have to stay neutral and not judge them, because otherwise that's not going to help them at all.
Right. And you bring up a really important subject, which is the concept of neutral. Now, neutral is not a super sexy subject, but I'm always explaining to people who want to open their intuition, if you're fine, which is frustrated, insecure, neurotic, or emotional, you're not neutral. And if you're not neutral, you're not able to read, right? So if I'm doing a medical intuitive reading or a soul reading, or if you're reading the Akashic records, you have to get into that space of neutral, which is where you're reading what's actually there in front of you. And as David Riddle said, with absolutely no judgment, right? And really holding with utmost compassion and tenderness and honoring of where a person is at. Because, we're all humans. We're all having a human experience. I've had people come in and they said, "Oh, Catherine, I've made so many mistakes." And I just joke with them. I'm like, "Well, how old are you?" And they'll tell me their age. And I'll say, "Well, trust me, the list is only going to get longer." We just have a big laugh, right? So, you want to really hold yourself with utmost tenderness and respect, and realize that everything that happens is for your highest good, whether you're immediately able to recognize it or not. And sometimes, years may have to pass before you really are able to see things from the soul perspective and see why you went through whatever you went through and the ways that your soul benefited from the experiences that you chose. So David Riddle, back to you. Can you give us some examples of the kind of information that comes through when you are reading the Akashic records? So what do you find when you're reading the Akashic records?
Well, like I mentioned, it's mostly in the healing work, so I don't really, it is a reading in a way. So I'm reading the body's energy.
All right.
I'm working on a level that hits on like the emotional levels and more of a silence, being able to bring them through their place. Now, on occasion, there are times when I can see certain things that just pop up, like a past life. I've worked with inner child, like being able to tune in and see the little child within that person and help them move through it, or see a past life that was really, really traumatic for somebody. I'll give you an example of one if you want.
Please.
Okay. There was a regular client of mine that I had seen over many years, and she came in just like a couple of days before a plane trip. And she said she's always had these problems with planes, but this time it was just like really, like she was actually like sweating in front of me talking about it. It was really like she was going through something major about this. So I did my usual opening up the records, and when I started working with her solar plexus, I saw her as a man back in World War II in a plane that was shot down and she couldn't get out, or he couldn't get out. And because of that problem, it seemed to be like something that was coming up, and I saw the plane going down. I'm like, wow, So what I did was I backed it up in my own mind, brought a parachute to that person, and saw that person safely exit the vehicle, the plane. And that plane trip for her ended up being no problem at all. And actually, she's flying all over the place. She'll be here next weekend on a plane coming from Maryland. So it's a very interesting, how these things pop up sometimes when they're in the field. This person I'd worked with many times, but before that, but at this particular time, it was coming up in the field, so it needed to be cleared.
Yeah, that is a great example. And it's also an example of sometimes when we have fears or phobias. And,
yes.
In ourselves, you're like, why is that? That doesn't make any sense. Like, nothing's happened to me. but it could be something from another lifetime. Um, I love that example you gave. I'll give an example from some of my clients. I remember
Yeah.
years ago, I worked with this gentleman and he had tremendous back pain. And how he came to me was another thing. And I do wonderful work on the physical level. I've taught yoga for 25 years now. I've written books about yoga exercises for back pain. You know, however, when this gentleman came, in order to resolve his back pain, we had to work on his energy body, like you're talking about, and go into his past lives. And this is somewhat funny, but what was funny was in this lifetime, he used a lot of torture language, like, I'm going to put you on the rack, this sort of thing. And he was an international business person. And, he would go different places in Europe and he'd be like, I think I was there. Well, as it turned out, one of his past life, he had been actually tortured. And so hence, I'm going to put you on the rack was part of his, you could even hear it in his vocabulary and his everyday talk. And so we worked on clearing that past life. And then in another past life, and this is all things that I literally see in my inner vision as I'm doing the healing work. He had been gored by a wild animal, and which it was in the upper back, and he'd had a lot of upper back pain. It was like, oh, that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So, so the point for our audience, going back to our audience, is that trained energy healers can often see, or in Riddle's sense, case, feel, and using the gift of clairsentience, what has happened to you, what your soul has experienced that has caused you to bring forward the experience of pain and suffering or fear and phobia into this lifetime, right?
Yes.
So, and again, so you're sensing this information in terms of feeling in our.
But this particular one, I mean, that was like pictures were just, because that was just so far up in her system.
Yes.
That I just saw the whole thing as a film, and that wasn't my usual modality, but
Right.
It had to be healed that way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that each of us, because how your soul communicates to you is going to be unique to you. So David is high in clairsentience, which is psychic feeling. I'm high in claircognizance, which is psychic knowing. But each of my clients, you may be clairvoyant, you may be clairaudient, and you're going to receive information in ways that is unique to you. Now, David Riddle, do you think that anyone can read the Akashic records?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And if you are actually looking for a prayer, because of I'm sorry that today I don't have that because there's certain things that I want to clarify in order to do this type of work that I do. But if they went to the lady that I learned the Akashic records from, lindahowe.com, all you have to do is sign up over there on her website, and you can get a download of the pathway prayer that teaches the Akashic records. It's different than the one that I learned from, but it's one that actually works really good for doing readings.
Yes, and I think the point is that in order to read someone's soul, it is a prayerful practice, right?
You have to, the whole idea of the Akashic records is that you go to the Lords of the Akashic records in order to get the permission, in order to access the information. And they're only going to give you what's available for you.
Right.
So part of that is doing it as a prayer. And it's important to open yourself up to that higher energy in order to access that.
Right. And you bring up something really important. I live my whole life prayerfully. So I literally, as soon as I open my eyes, I start praying, I start meditating, I'm doing breathing exercises, and it goes on that for some, indeterminate period of time until I feel that I'm literally in tune. And I'm always pointing out to my clients that the word intuitive means in tune. So you have to be in tune with yourself, in tune with your higher source, in tune with God, and allowing this information to come through us for the highest good. So, David Riddle, what do you feel the benefits are for a person to have their Akashic records read?
Yeah, and that's going back to the reading part. We're not talking about the energy because that we've talked about that, but having your records read can really resolve some of the issues that are going on in your life. So if you're able to get a good record reader that can open up these ideas of why you're being held back or how to move forward in your life, that can be very exciting. It can get you through the hump of, like, why do I keep on hitting this wall? Why can't I get past this place? So doing the type of readings that you do, the soul level, that would be very good. And doing the Akashic record readings are very good too for helping that. The other part about that is that you're also, if you get your records read, there is a healing generally that takes place just by having the records read, because it resolves certain things within yourself, and with that level of karma that can be resolved, that in itself, without, it just helps move the energy a lot better. I think having insights into your soul purpose, having insights into what's holding you back, can really help a person move through these little situations that end up being bigger situations that shouldn't even be part of your holding back anymore.
Yes. And you brought up something really important, which is soul purpose. In our society today, at least in the United States, I believe that suicide is the 9th leading cause of death. And
Wow.
among certain, which is just heartbreaking. And among young people, and I'm talking, I believe it's 17 to 34, it's the 2nd leading cause of death. And what I find in my work as a medical intuitive healer, that, the sooner that people can understand that you are a soul, that your soul has a purpose. Like, your soul wanted to be here. Your soul wanted to be in your body in this lifetime and has important work to do, whether you recognize what it is or not, whether you figure that out or not. You're an important person. You're a VIP. You're a vibrational interference pattern. You're already super important. There's nobody just like you. And so it's my experience that when people understand what your soul is up to, it helps to give some perspective. Why have I had the challenges that I've had? Why has my life been difficult in the way that it has been, right? And what I find is that many times, a lot of times that the people who on the ego level have been our enemies or are, the worst monsters in our lives, on the soul level, they may be your best friends. And they may be people who are, teaching you strength or teaching you forgiveness or setting you on the right path, right? I wouldn't be the person who I am today without my father, right? The first memory of my life was my dad beating my mother with a belt buckle and my mom covering me with her body so I didn't get hit. So on a soul level, thank you, Dad, right? So going back to, what I find is, there's so many people, so many of us who've lost our connection to our soul. We've never had a real clear understanding about why our soul is here, what our soul is, why did your soul decide it was so important for you to be in this body in this lifetime? You're not an accident. There's nothing accidental about your life. And when you can come to a compassionate understanding of how important you actually are, and understanding like what you bring to life, then your life has new meaning. And, even the struggles that you're going through have new meaning, right?
Absolutely. Yes, and it's a very interesting thing when you look at it like with your father. I had a thing I had to work with my original father too. And he had to go through a lot of pain, I'm sure, by being painful to us. So there's a level of like these people that are awful to us are actually sacrificing something within themselves to give us the lessons that we learn.
Right.
In that sense, because if we're all of spirit and we're all like supposedly this light beings, and then we come onto earth and we incarnate, and now we're some awful thing that just we're not, we have lost our soul on some level, but we're creating something for somebody else.
Right. We've lost our soul connection.
Yes, and having to live without that.
Right. Which is a very, very painful, horrible place to be. It's a lonely place to be. It's depressing. It's anxiety ridden. And, we're talking about karma. And basically, the simplest way to understand karma is it's the result of the energy you put out. And I always say, the most selfish thing I can ever do is be kind and generous to everybody, because whatever I put out is whatever I receive back. Right? So when I'm selfish, I'm kind and generous and thoughtful, right? Because that's what I want to receive back, right? Yeah. So again, when we lose that connection to our soul, and when we, don't understand why we're here or what we're doing, it's an incredibly, it's like living in the desert, right?
Well, and there are so many changes that are going on. The people are being propelled in so many different ways. If you watch these things, these cosmic connections that are going on, that are just like propelling us further and further into the next world, whatever that is, that's tearing a lot of people up inside. There's a lot of people that are lost because a lot of these younger people are almost, I think, expecting that this place to be a more peaceful, more loving place. And then they find out that actually they have to work, they have to do this, they have this debt, they have all this other stuff that's in front of them. And it seems that their lives don't have the purpose that they thought that they did. But it's a matter of being able to hold on and move through these changes, that I think that we're going to find that kind of stuff will slow down. I'm really hoping, because I know that I've heard that the younger generations are really having a tough time.
Yeah, because they haven't learned yet how to have that soul connection, right?
Yes.
Which is so, it's when I think about soul medicine, which I talk about in my book, Reading the Soul, it's just like you feed your body, you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or you exercise, your soul needs to be nurtured as well. And so when you can learn, how does my soul, what's the best medicine for my soul, right?
Right.
Watching, walking in nature, meditation, prayer. And the more that we learn to feed our soul, spiritual community, being with like-minded people, laughing, dancing, climbing the mountain, conquering your fears. These are things that really feed your soul. And when you learn how to feed your soul, you have this humongous, unshakable inner strength that can help you get through all kinds of challenges and difficulties. So, David Riddle, how has connecting with the Akashic Records changed your life and your work? Obviously, when we connect with information of this depth and profundity, it changes us, right?
Yes. Yeah, I came into this whole thing years ago when I left my corporate job and got a healing. So actually, I quit my job after getting a healing. And because of the fact that I felt so much coming through at that point, I knew I had to follow it. Otherwise, I was gonna perish. I mean, I mean, if not physically, it would be emotionally, mentally, and everything. I just felt that the world was not where I needed to be. So there was an awakening with that. And then it just was a natural thing when I was working at this metaphysical bookstore that I would learn Reiki, start working with clients, and then opening the records and doing the work that I do. And that's been a backbone of my life now, because that energy that comes through is just so strong, and it's so peaceful that it gives me more to work with. Like you hear sometimes about like meditation as being like, a lot of people have trouble with it. But if you're actually working with meditation the way it should be, then you are actually in the energy of it. So there's a connection that most people don't really realize when they start working with meditation. Clear your mind, but it's really actually like once you clear your mind, the energy flow starts happening, and then you get that embodiment of energy within yourself.
That's a beautiful, beautiful explanation, to actually feel the energy of peace around you. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I would say for me that as I have been reading the soul of my clients, and it's given me tremendous compassion. And you know, if there's one word that my clients hear me say over and over again, is compassion. To have compassion for yourself and have compassion for people around you, and be gentle with yourself, right? And
Absolutely.
right. So you've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, your global feel-good radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. My books that we talked about today, Reading the Soul and Unlimited Intuition, now are available on Amazon. And our wonderful guest today, Akashic energy worker David Riddle. You can find out more about David Riddle and his wonderful work at chibalancingcenter.com. And remember, you are a soul having a human experience. Be gentle with yourself. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.